Keep back, foul creature. I've got this whip and I know how to use it. Listen, buddy, you crack that thing at me one more time, and I'll give you reason to stay in that shell. Hello, everybody. Sparkster1701 here. It's time to take a look at another Transformers Pretender. And this time around, as I stated last week, we're going to take a look at the Autobot Space Defense Warrior, Cloudburst. Cloudburst was released in 1988, but unlike Sky High that we reviewed last time, Cloudburst was one of the original Pretenders, so he was around throughout all of 1988 and would be discontinued by 1989. Cloudburst really didn't get much material to be worked with, but he was a character featured in the Japanese anime series Super God Master Force, where he was one of the minor characters featured as the God Masters, or Power Masters as we know of them, along with the Headmaster Juniors, seemed to take more prominence than the Pretenders did. Although in the early episodes, the Pretenders did get their chance to shine. Cloudburst is one of the stranger characters for the Autobots in the sense that he actually enjoys being in his shell more than he does being out of it. Cloudburst took the chance to reinvent who he is when he was offered the chance to become a Pretender, so he comes off as a totally different bot when he's inside the shell than when he's outside of it. The only problem is that his friends really aren't buying it and telling him he doesn't need it. Cloudburst, however, prefers to live in denial. At any rate, we're going to set the shell aside here, and we'll take a look at the robot itself. And out of a lot of the robots that were done up for the Pretenders, Cloudburst here actually doesn't look too bad. He's got a nice fair amount of detail on him, even with the minimal standards that the Pretenders were using at that time. Bring the light over here a little bit. But he also does have a fair amount of articulation. You can turn Cloudburst's head from left to right. His arms can be rotated all the way around at the shoulder. His legs can be brought up about so far on him, and unlike many of his compatriots, he does have a joint at the knee, allowing him to bend his leg at the knee 90 degrees. And he does have articulation at the ankle as well. So, for a Pretender figure, Cloudburst here really breaks the mold of what we should expect. Now, of course, we've got to transform Cloudburst. And, of course, to start that, we should first remove him of his gun. We'll set it aside because we'll need it in a minute. And then we just knock him down. Just 'cause. Alright, to start transforming him, we rotate his head so it faces backwards. We raise his arms up into an I surrender pose. And then we come down here and we fold his feet down. And then next, we're going to turn him over. And we have to fold out these wings. And then we reach in here and get this black piece of plastic. And we fold it out so it comes down between his legs. Take that as you may. And then next we turn him back over We turn his legs up at the hip. And then you can bend his legs at the knees to rest his legs fully against his body. And then, of course, we will take his gun and insert the big post right under here, under the nose. And then there we have it. He is in his alternate mode, which is a Star Cruiser. And of course, in the way things look, it looks like we got the wings folded out the wrong way. But we at least give you that as an option. But if you really want to be picky about it for the instruction's sake, the wings should really be that way. But the other way didn't look too bad either. They claim he's a spaceship, and yeah, that's semi-plausible, but unfortunately with the way his legs hang up like that, there isn't any sort of elegance to the look. So, well, he isn't going to come off as looking like a sleek beauty like the Enterprise. He also doesn't come off looking like a flying bucket of bolts like the Millennium Falcon. But I still don't think that this thing really is going to convince us it flies in space. Even if we had somebody like Han Solo behind the cockpit. Still, though, the toy does swoosh reasonably well. I guess that's about all you could ask for a flying toy. Alrighty, now to get him ready to go inside the Pretender's shell, you would take his arms, you fold them back, and you also fold down his feet. Like so. They also say you need to turn his head to face the other way. I don't know why, but whatever. We'll humor them. And then we'll open up the shell. We drop him inside. And then try to line everything up as we close him in. Alright. Once we have him inside, we can fully secure him in by attaching the belt and the helmet. And then, of course, arm the man with his gun and his whip. And then there we have it. He is inside the shell, ready to go out and start blasting people. Or maybe even join up with the Belmont clan and go hunt some vampires. It is that time of the year. Now, of course, to take a look at all of Cloudburst's accessories, we will, of course, start with the shell. Like many of them, the red is the dominant color that the shell is in, and then everything is painted over it. Consequently, as you can see from a lot of it, the paint applications are rather weak and easily damaged. This one apparently saw a lot of damage from its previous owner. But it's good to know that at least the previous owner had some fun with it. The shell, of course, does break into two pieces when it's not being a pain in the butt to do so. There we go. This, of course, is the front half of the shell. And then we have the back half. Of course, on the back half of these shells, these always have the little posts, so you'll want to be careful for breakage. Cloudburst also has an extra post that's coming out in the middle, just above the split in his legs. Again, take that as you may. I know there are a lot of you that are going to joke about that. Next up on his accessories is, of course, his belt. It's done up in a nice soft plastic, so the edges of it do bend and give to go around the waist. Even the centerpiece itself is made of some soft, pliable plastic, so it won't break very easily. Kind of almost looks like the belts they fight for in wrestling. And of course we have his whip, which the instructions describe as a lightning whip. So apparently it gives off an electric charge when it's cracked. Probably along similar lines to the whips used by the Roadkill Rodney enemies in the old Ninja Turtles arcade game. I remember getting hit with those quite a lot when I played that game. Then, of course, we have his gun, which the instructions describe as a Thunderbolt laser pistol. Of course, you can see it's got a knob here on the side for the robot to hold it, and then a large post underneath for the shell and the Star Cruiser. It's almost in the shape of a missile, too, when you look at it. And then lastly, we have this little rinky-dink helmet. Which is pretty small, but that's okay. Most of the head on the Pretender is pretty well covered by a lot of the side armor, so a small helmet isn't really all that bad. The helmet, although, is made of very hard plastic, so it doesn't really give. So keep that in mind as you look for these accessories. Moving right along now, we'll take a look at his instructions. And they're done up in the same style that all Pretenders did, but theirs is pretty much more generic for the first wave, since as you can see, they've got a generic pose that can be done for the shell. And the robot is also not done in an exaggerated pose, but we're obviously dealing with a prototype version of Cloudburst, because as you can see, the head design does not match what the final product came out. So I'm guessing this was drawn from an earlier version of the toy. And then, of course, we move right along here to the list of accessories. Then it goes on to show you how to arm him and then transform him into the Star Cruiser. Yeah, they insist the wings should come out as shown, but as I also showed you, they can go out the other way, like the X-29. So it's kind of your choice, really. And lastly, how to get him inside the shell. And how to arm the shell. Then we get a decent load of stickers to go on him. And then at the end, it's save your robot points and save your tech specs. So speaking of the tech spec, we've got it right over here. It's all done up in red. It's done up in a reddish color to signify he's an Autobot. It even says Autobot above the picture. And of course the picture shows the shell, robot, and alternate mode, as was common with many of the Pretenders. It gives his name as Cloudburst, and his function is space defense. His motto is, "You can't tell a bot by his cover." Aggressive, witty, and charming, but only when hiding in his outer shell. Wary of everyone and everything, especially Decepticons. Uses his outer shell to disguise his dull personality as well as himself. Reluctant to leave his outer shell so he can transform into an interplanetary star cruiser, armed with particle beam cannon. So apparently his gun changes when it's mounted on the spaceship. Within shell, armed with lightning whip and thunderbolt laser pistol. Doesn't really give us a whole lot, does it? And then now we put the decoder on here, and let's see what it says for his stats. It lists his strength as 7, his intelligence is 8, his speed is 10, his endurance is 7, his rank is 6, his courage and firepower are 8, and his skill is 7. So, for somebody that's aggressive, witty, and charming in the shell, he's very powerful. So it makes you wonder, does the stats on there reflect him as the robot like it should, or the figure inside the shell? Rather confusing. Now we get to my thoughts on Cloudburst. Well, Cloudburst was one of them that they showed off the most in the commercials, because I certainly do remember the close-ups of him being shown in there. And especially the unique weapon that he has in the form of this whip. However, the toy itself, it's actually pretty good when you look at it. The robot has significantly more articulation than most of the other Pretenders ever had. So, while most of the generalizations are that the Pretenders aren't really any good, here's one that actually is pretty good, as he does have a little more articulation, so that does increase the play value. The Star Cruiser mode, it's alright. It certainly doesn't look as good as the Decepticon counterparts, but it certainly looked a lot better than the helicopter that Sky High became. So, at least it tried, but it still misses the mark a little bit. The shell's not too bad, although I think it suffers from having a little too much paint on it. Since, as you saw in mine, it's got a fair amount of paint damage to it. So, I think they could have cut back on some of the paint schemes on it. Just a little bit, and I think they could have done something different with the whip. I mean, don't get me wrong, I do enjoy the fact that it came with a whip. That's a nice feature. But, unfortunately, with it being made out of the plastic like it is, it's permanently stuck in that pose. So it kind of loses a lot of the action ability. I mean, I think even the old Indiana Jones toys did a whip a lot better than that. I certainly know the Catwoman toy that was done for Batman Returns did a better job with a whip. So, I mean, yeah, granted, I understand there's also concerns for child safety by giving them a toy like that, but something with a little more playability would probably have sold this toy a little bit better. Because otherwise, it just looks like he's holding a limp snake or something. I don't know, but at least if nothing else, Cloudburst was a sign that the Pretender line could have been something good. Unfortunately, with a lot of the others that we got, it unfortunately is remembered more as a bit of a joke than as a serious competitor in the toy market. At any rate, that's my review of the Autobot Space Defense Warrior Cloudburst. I hope you all enjoyed it. If you liked this video, please leave me a thumbs up here on YouTube. If you're new to the channel, please hit the subscribe button down below and join our ranks. Don't forget to ring the bell so you'll be notified when I post new content. I ask you also share this video with your friends and fellow collectors. That's what helps this channel grow. And also share your thoughts about Cloudburst in the comments down below. This is Sparkster1701 saying I will catch you all later.